Well, hello and welcome back to the NMASSP video blog. This is our second installment, and so we're excited to see you back here, and we're glad you came back. So this month we're going to be highlighting a few very timely topics here. So first off, if you didn't know, this is the Arts and Education Month, and so we have a lot to celebrate, talk about there. And then next up we have school safety, so that's timely because we do have a state school safety summit coming up next month. And then looking also at legislative priorities for New Mexico. And so that's kind of the summary for what we're going to discuss here today. And so I'll hand it right over to Dr. Hall to talk about arts and education.
Thank you, Rocky. Yeah, arts and education is a topic sometimes that we don't cover quite as much, I think, in broadcasting and talking about public education, but it is vital. So earlier at the start of this school year, the governor put out a proclamation that this was going to be the year of arts and education for New Mexico PED, and I just couldn't have been more happy. One of the things that I do in my role as a federal programs director is I also help Aztecs District with what's known as the Fine Arts in Elementary Act funding formula that really all districts or most districts get. And so that's a piece of each district's SEG. Their guaranteed funding per capita for every kid is peeled off, and that goes towards making sure there is either programming or staffing available for elementary fine arts. In Aztec, we use that funding to make sure that we have music in all of our elementaries. We do have art teachers in most of them. I know in Farmington's district, they've taken a special commitment to arts in the lower grades, and they've funded it all the way down through. And so they use a lot of their FAEA on programming costs. So I think part of what the governor was recognizing and what public ed realizes is that arts in education down to the lower grades all the way up to fine arts in the high school level foster creativity. They enhance, they supplement that core instruction that everybody thinks about with reading, math, and more of the tested subjects. But it does give young kids and students in general an opportunity to really find meaning and relevance in being at school when they get involved in those sorts of programs. So I'd say a real highlight of fine arts and education is the way our regional music teachers get together and support things like band competitions, choir, orchestra, theater. There's a whole host of things that are going on up here in our county. So
yeah, and it's such a valuable program,
Right.
each of those. And with a group of students there, it's such a benefit for their social emotional wellness for those students. And oftentimes it is the outlet for so many kids. And,
Right.
all the stressors of being in school, it really is their niche. And so those students are so comfortable. I know just
Right.
recently we had a great play just last week, and then our music performance assessment just last week as well. So it really is the highlighted time, and this last week in the state band
Right.
tournament. And so such a
Right.
cool thing that is getting recognized on that level, because you may not know it, but this is only the second year of having a state championship for marching band. So
that's
cool
true.
that that's
Yeah.
getting recognized as well in the NMAA, because it does function so much like a sport in that team mentality and the things you learn in athletics just the same.
Right, and I think particularly to highlight that this year, what we're going to be doing in this episode is we're going to be cutting to a clip that we're going to record with one of our principals in the state that has a very unique look on fine arts and public education. Miss Tamara Lopez is a principal of PAPA, the Public Academy for the Performing Arts down in Albuquerque. Tamara's also on the NMASSP board with us, and she is our current Principal of the Year. So we're going to be cutting to a clip in this episode here in a bit to highlight a brief conversation with Tamara, just talking about the uniqueness of a school that essentially is set up for performing arts, that is a public charter school here in the state of New Mexico. Fine arts isn't the only topic we're going to be covering today. We're also going to talk a little bit about school safety. And the reason this is a timely topic is because the state, for the last 3 years, has sponsored a Safe School Summit in New Mexico. That summit is coming up in November. The dates on that are November 17th through 19th. That'll be at the Marriott Pyramid in Albuquerque. Registration's $100. I will tell you my personal connection to it is I've been helping with the wonderful group of folks planning it, along with Constellation Consulting. And I'm going to be doing a session speaking a little bit about my involvement with the Principal Recovery Network through our national affiliate, NASSP, and a little bit tying in Guide to Recovery that we've developed. And school safety is relevant probably, it is any time of year, but with that conference coming up, we particularly wanted to highlight a section of it.
And I think that conference is so valuable because it really illustrates the collaborative effort it is to keep a school safe, and the relationships that have to exist with your local law enforcement, emergency management. Also, I know Palms Associates Insurance Authority. Those folks will have some representation there. There's everything from threat assessments and that the mental health side, all the way up to that safety planning, the piece that we have to coordinate those efforts with our local law enforcement.
Right, and there is still time to get registered. I would say that principals interested in this should talk to their mental health team, clearly their school resource officers, their HR office. I will tell you there's an interesting bit in the agenda for that conference where they're actually going to be doing a prepare training for mental health professionals related to what's known as the C-STAG, and this is the tool that your mental health teams, or most mental health teams, are using for school threat assessments. And so that's an important tie-in. Well, with those two things highlighted, Rocky, do you think now's a good time we should shift over and put in the clip and highlight our conversation with Tamara? So stay tuned. As soon as we're done with that, we'll be right back to the rest of the episode. All right, so we are under recording. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm Warman Hall, and today we're speaking with Tamara Lopez. She's the Executive Director of the Public Academy of Performing Arts in Albuquerque and the 2025 New Mexico Association of Secondary School Principals Principal of the Year. Congratulations, Tamara, and welcome to the show, or the blog. I don't know what Rocky and I are calling this yet.
Well, thank you so much. Great to see you, Armin.
That's great. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Tamara, you've been recognized statewide for your outstanding leadership. What does receiving the NMASSP Principal of the Year Award mean to you?
Well, it's really humbling and gratifying. I think so much in education, we give and we give and we give, and we plant seeds that we don't really quite know where they're going to go. We have hopes for all of our students. So to take time out of the school year to be able to travel to Washington, D.C., to join with other principals doing the same work, boots on the ground, that street level data was an incredible experience for me. So I'm extremely grateful. There are so many amazing principals and leaders in our state, and many of them have helped shape me to be who I am today. So there are many, many people out in our state that should take advantage of this opportunity as well. Like, it's just really wonderful to take a moment to celebrate. And it's also very gratifying to know that the same issues in each school are the similar issues across the nation. The same struggles we have in New Mexico, although there's rural, there's different populations across the United States, we're all working towards the same common goals and using and battling the same struggles. So it's really reflective and helpful to hear from principals across the nation that they're dealing with the same issues, and where it really helps me feel like we're in it together.
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity, and I wish we had more principals encourage one another to jump in and lead by example the way you have, Tamara. I'll remind membership, if you're watching this blog, that in order to nominate someone or self-nominate, you have to be a due-paying member of NMASSP. So if you've not done that yet, jump right in and we can do those nominations because they are open for the current school year. Tamara, the New Mexico Public Ed Department has declared 2025 the Year of Arts and Education. Now, you're in a unique position as the leader of a performing arts school. How is PAPA leveraging that state initiative, and what value do you want to share that you believe the arts bring to student development?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways we're leveraging that initiative from the governor is just spreading the news, sharing the news of what we do at our school in particular. So at our school, it's a middle school and high school, 6th through 12th grade, public charter school, lottery, anyone is eligible to come to our school. But we do prioritize college prep and performing arts. So that means all of our elective classes are arts classes, from film production, ballet, dance, jazz, all of the music, modern bands, which is like your own little garage band. You can play what you want and invent your own music. There's just a wide variety of options here. And what's exciting is that our core teachers integrate art into their content at least once a semester, more than that, but they essentially pick a content core state standard and then have students demonstrate their proficiency through the arts and through choice. So I take that math standard, science, ELA, history standard, and then ask the students, how can you show me this? And sometimes they write poems, they do dances, they do visual art, a variety of ways. Creativity is a limit, so there's no limit there. And then teachers collect that data. What percentage of your students can demonstrate content mastery through the arts, proficient or above? And wouldn't you know it, they do a really great job. Not a big surprise there, but we definitely celebrate and share arts. We know that it's just vital to human development and social emotional well-being to have access to the arts. I was one of those kids that went to school just for choir class or just to be a part of the thespian troupe. So at our school, that's definitely, we have that hook, that buy-in, that we have creative students and creative staff. Many of our staff are also performing artists themselves. So that's an interesting place to be. And it's just creative and fun. It's a regular school, so we do, you got to come to school, attendance, take the test, all that. It's not all fame or High School Musical. But there are components that are like that when we're preparing for a performance. There'll be kids in the hall practicing their flamenco or practicing their classical guitar. So it's a joyful and kind of different space to be in, where you can release that creativity. It doesn't have a feeling of like policing behavior. If you have purple hair, green hair, 5 piercings, that's fine, as long as you're in class doing what you're supposed to do. So there's a relaxed feeling of being your authentic self at our school. That's really wonderful that the arts lends itself to.
That's awesome. I couldn't imagine that with your experience in a school like Papa, you could almost probably teach workshops to principals like I was, who when I used to go into our choir, music, any of those performing arts classes, just thinking about how to do a walkthrough and how to articulately like describe what you're seeing and in education-ese terms. And you touched on that beautifully. And I think that was such an insight that would help most principals that probably don't have that daily exposure to how arts so seamlessly integrates. So thank you for sharing about your school. That's wonderful. Yeah, so Tamara, one of the other things we're focusing on this month in the blog is school safety. The New Mexico School Safety Summit is coming up this month on the 17th. I'm sure there have to be some things unique to Papa and its status as an art school. Can you give us a little bit of insights on the topic of safety and student well-being related to your school?
Absolutely. So at the core of, I think, are all of our concerns with safety around school and making sure kids are safe and healthy and coming to school every day. They're not staying home because of conflict or bullying or anything like that. I think the core of that is really developing a full comprehensive SEL something, right? I don't think it's a canned program, but that your students and your students know that you care about them. So something that we do at Papa once a month, we have a mental health team that pushes in and teaches content for the day in one subject. So if it's social studies department or math or science or English, they're getting lessons all day long. So then our teachers can have vertical teaming and sit together and plan for the day while the kids are getting lessons. So each month there's a different topic that we're teaching and educating kids around, whether that's friendship boundaries, dating violence prevention, whatever that looks like. We know that also through the arts, there's a variety of SEL skills that are developed, and you're gaining perspective and independence and voice and autonomy. So just the act of preparing for a performance, having that vulnerability to present in front of someone else, taking that positive risk,
Right.
the failure, right? I fall on my face, but I get back up. What happens after that failure? So within our school, there are opportunities for just practicing life and being a peopling, looking up, making that eye contact, communication, getting out of our cell phone and our self and our self doubts, right? Just practicing that. I think that really contributes to a safe climate, because when you see somebody that isn't feeling connected or part of a group, there's a chance to pull them in, and through a shared experience like a concert or a performance, now you're a part of the school. You're a part of our
Right.
DNA. We have a spotlight performance at lunch and you are part of the audience. We have these collective experiences that you're a part of the school. So drawing people in who may be at another school or kind of at the outskirts or not quite noticed or quiet or not connected, we have the ability in a different way to include them in a bigger context of our culture. So then if someone's not feeling well or looking down or odd, it catches our attention, so we can pull them in. We also use this very interesting tool. It's an AI chatbot that was developed by psychologists and psychiatrists, and it's called Alongside. And so every kid has access to this at our school through their email credentials. And so they can access that on their Chromebook, or they can access it on a cell phone, not during instructional hours, but lunchtime or outside of home. But if it's a cell phone or an app, but you can access and you chat with a virtual llama or different characters that have different personas. One of them is kind of snarky teenager, but it's all based on really like cognitive behavior theory. And so it's research based, as opposed to a kid hiding out in a bathroom or smoking somewhere.
Right.
They can chat and they can get connected to one of our counselors, but they can also have choice in getting through the moment. So journaling, prompting, games, education experience, there's YouTube videos. It's really student friendly and done really well. And so that's a side by side with our education. It doesn't replace a counselor or a therapist, but it's in the moment. How can I get through this stressful time to get to the next part?
Right.
So that's a piece of our wellness and just looking at safety.
Well, what a great tool with student well-being and the mental health concerns at SEL to do something natively. I mean, the kids, they live most of their lives in the cell phones now.
Right.
Having the tool right there is so valuable. Well, we're kind of out of time for today, and I do want to highlight that what a trooper Tamara is for doing this interview. It's Halloween Friday, and I think viewers probably noticed in your background that Chick-fil-A Cal just walked by. She had a group of kids go by dressed up, what fun. So
Yeah.
Tamara, thank you for taking your time with us today. Is there any kind of last words real quick you'd like to summarize for viewers?
Just thank you, Orman, for the opportunity to share the good work within our state. I would just encourage you all to be a part of the association, because much like teachers can feel like they're in silos in their independent classrooms, being a part of the organization, there's just strength in numbers, and it's reassuring. So thank you everyone for your good work, and consider joining the association because it's really powerful and positive.
Thank you very much, folks. You've been listening to Tamara Lopez at PAPA. Thank you for tuning in, and be looking forward to future blogs down the road. Thanks again, Tamara. Bye, everybody.
All right, and welcome back, and thank you to Tamara Lopez for joining us and representing PAPA and the great things going on there, and again, the great value that our arts and education play in what we do every single day. So
thank you for your leadership, Tamara, too.
Yes, and congratulations as the Principal of the Year. So for those of you who do not know, we do have an award for the Principal of the Year that is nominated and elected or decided through the NMASSP. Great way to recognize a principal that's doing great work out there. Warman and I were both recipients of the Principal of the Year award within the last 10 years, and so it's a great experience if you do get chosen. You get to go to DC and connect with lots of different leaders from across the country on common issues, and it's just a great way to represent our state and highlight the great things happening by principals in our state.
Rocky had to say 10 years because mine was quite a while ago. So.
Couldn't remember the date, but I knew it was within the last 10.
Within the last decade, definitely.
Yeah. So moving on now, a big part of what NMASSP does is advocate for the needs of principals all over the state, and not just principals, teachers, superintendents, and all things education. And so we wanted to take a little bit of time to go over the legislative platform that is being advocated for you through your NMASSP dues and the folks in the leadership in our program. And so Warman is going to talk through some of the funding priorities, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about more of the policy priorities that are being pushed.
Right, and I know one hot topic that is shared between principals and superintendents in the state is student transportation funding, and that is on the legislative priority for NMCEL this year. It is something that they're going to really be asking legislators to take a look at a fair and equitable way to sufficiently fund student transportation for public schools. I believe there hasn't been a single district in the state of New Mexico that has not had to routinely dip into operational costs to cover student transportation costs. And that's got a two-pronged concern with it, because the legislature needs to recognize that funding adequate transportation is such a fundamental but under-recognized by the public aspect of getting kids into quality programming for schools. So one of the main things that I know they're going to be taking a look at is how do we fund just the daily transportation to and from school. That's not to speak of the fact that districts also have to carry the burden of the very important cost of activities transportation for those kids that end up making it to state competitions and need to go across the state sometimes to participate.
Well, and really the impact as a principal, what that ends up doing is when we don't get funded fully for transportation, then we have to dip into operational or other areas, and so we all know that equates to money out of the classroom. Absolutely. And money away from kids, and that's the last thing we want to see.
Absolutely, and I think I would imagine that part of what the Association of School Administrators is going to approach them about is the DFA, the Department of Finance Authority, does have a set per mile rate that they pay when they compensate folks for training travel that folks have to get around the state outside of even just public education. But even that rate comes nowhere near reaching the sufficiency for public education that it needs to cover what those kids do. If you tallied up every kid every day that does public transportation and added up that mileage, I don't know if that mileage rate would equate to what currently the legislature is giving, but we need to take a look at a way of recognizing the miles that go in, the wear on the buses, the driver's salaries, and just the transportation costs to get those kiddos to school every day, right? And
we know that's a unique challenge here in New Mexico because our state is so spread out. I mean, huge state geographically, but yet population not necessarily that dense. So
that's exactly
challenge
right.
that I know here, our schools up here in Farmington and Pedro Vista, we have a bus going to Albuquerque every day almost, to participate in those athletics activities. And that's not to mention the large districts we have geographically, kids that are getting on the bus way before I'm awake, and then they're probably getting home not until I've already eaten dinner. So
if you look at Bloomfield schools, Farmington schools, CCSD, Gallup, McKinley, they are such large districts that pull kids from, in Farmington's example, so far south, that kids are riding quite a few miles to get in to school every day. Since we're talking about rural districts, one of the other legislative priorities that I know administrators are going to be approaching the Santa Fe about this year has to do with housing in federal in rural communities for school districts. So I really find this an interesting thing, and I'm glad that it's on the priorities this year. Many are probably familiar with teacherages for some of our districts that do have tribal lands and federal land. Because there's so little land that teachers could buy for their housing or rent for their housing, the school districts, CCSD is one of our neighbors that has just done a wonderful new project with building teacher housing But I think school administrators are approaching the legislature this year about looking at rural communities. When you think of very tiny places like Camado, and you think of places where to get teachers out there, they're having to kind of sit there and calculate the numbers to go, if I'm gonna teach in Camado, the closest place I'm gonna be able to live might be Socorro. And that's over an hour drive one way to get to work, and so that's really a big cost. And so I think it's a great legislative priority for them to pick up as well.
And a neighboring district here out on the other side of the border for us, up in Durango, Colorado, that recently just purchased a set of apartments, and the plan is to use that for staff housing. And they have a slightly different issue because they're just really priced out.
The cost of real estate.
The cost of living up there is so high that it's hard for a teacher to come in. And so there are definitely districts that are doing this, whether it be teacherages like you talked about, or maybe it's more of a financial a living stipend of sorts. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Absolutely. Now, we talked a little bit already about school safety funding priorities. That is something that we're taking forward. We mentioned before the clip with Tamara a little bit about school safety, so I won't sit on that too long. But just know that again, if there are school safety issues that are important to principals viewing this episode, please do reach out to your superintendent and make sure to reach out to the association, because those are going to be the folks that are going to be sitting in those committee meetings when the legislature kind of warms up. What I would like to hop to is the idea that a lot of district leaders and school leaders are really hoping to press Santa Fe this year about protections of 2 mil levy funding. There seems to be a movement afoot with the public ed department that wants to put some caps and limits on districts' ability to do 2 mil funding in their community. I want to highlight that this is important for principals to be aware of and to really add their voice to advocacy about. 2 mil funding is often the way that schools are able to really respond to community needs in facilities and other things that are important to keep our programs lively for kids. I'll give an example of the space that we're in right now. Farmington High School has a beautiful recording studio. Our young friend Dylan is here with us as our kind of producer of this series, hopefully. I'm gonna give a shout out to you, Dylan. If you want to follow Dylan's work, he's on not Instagram. Is it Instagram? You can tell I don't know what I'm talking about. Instagram, and his handle is "Here Comes the Bullet Train," and then it's just underscored as you move along. So Dylan, I feel, is a great example as a student and this facility of how programming is supported by 2 mil. To build facilities like this, districts have got to have the ability to go after 2 mil bond levies, and putting a clamp on that, I'm not sure what the state's logic is, but I can tell you the logic on the other end really resounds with me, that districts have to have that ability.
And sometimes that 2 mil isn't the bright and shiny audiovisual room. Sometimes it's just
HVAC.
the cost of doing business. So,
New desks for
keeping
the
kids cool or warm, depending on the season, and replacing roofs and all those types of things. And once again, that all boils down to, if we don't get that support in the 2 mil, then that's money coming out of operational, that's money coming out of the classroom, and that's, again, not what we want to see.
Right.
So,
and those, I think, are most of the funding priorities on the legislative agenda. And Rocky, you want to talk a little bit about some of the policy priorities?
Yeah,
right?
Policy priorities. And I mean, for those of you who have followed legislative priorities in the last 20 years, you're going to be not surprised at this first one, because this is one that seems to bubble up to the top almost every single year, and I feel like it's gained some traction, but it just still has not made it across the finish line when it comes to the session. And so the first one there is the reinstatement of a board of education for the state. So we all have our local boards that really provide that oversight in our own districts, but we're talking about a state board of education, and this was in place in New Mexico all the way up until 2003, when it was abolished, and they transitioned over to having a cabinet level representative that is really reporting to our governor. And so what that does for us as principals and for districts, it makes it challenging, because I don't know if you can count on your fingers how many leaders of the Department of Ed we've had in the last 10 years, but there's a lot of turnover, and what that equates to for us as principals and districts is inconsistency. And so it would be really great to see a state board of education that would remain more consistent with the needs of New Mexico, and even more importantly, in many ways, providing equal and equitable representation for all of those groups that we serve as principals and as school districts. And so who knows what that might look like? Is it they're pulling people from principals, superintendents, associations, maybe even the teacher unions, just all these different people that can represent a subgroup whom we serve, whether that be students, teachers, staff members. And so that kind of voice could trickle up in a school board or a state school board probably more effectively, in my opinion. And again, that's just me and my own personal opinion, but I do believe we could see better representation and more consistency out of that state school board.
And I will highlight for principals, this isn't a party politics issue. This is an issue of how to adequately maintain consistent guidance to public education in the state of New Mexico. They have a template. We used to have a state board of education, so there's a place to start from. And I don't want to, I think I'll stress, I don't think we're trying to say that like Secretary Padilla and her predecessors have not worked hard. And they've got great staff that do great things for New Mexico. But inherently, when it's a political appointee, every time there's an election year come up, they have to have this worry about if PED's going to reshuffle sometimes the positions in PED leadership roles. And we have seen that in recent years or in the recent past. And I think that has a trickle effect on the ability for us to take care of things like special education policy, take care of instructional objectives across districts in the state. So I think there are a lot of people that probably share your perspective, Rocky, that it would be nice if we could make this shift back to having public education set as a standing priority and not a political priority in the state of New Mexico.
Yeah, and just a way to provide those checks and balances that we know that our school boards provide to us.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and in the spirit of consistency, another focus will be that of retaining superintendents. So there's the push to try to encourage and find ways to keep our superintendents in their districts longer. So the data all speaks to the fact that the longer a superintendent is in tenure in their district, the better the results are going to be. And again, that is all about consistency. If you have a superintendent, new one each year, you run into the same thing. New superintendent, new priorities. Whereas if we have one for 5-10 years, you're going to have better consistency and you're going to have a stronger focus, and your district's going to push forward. So I'm very lucky that our superintendent has been here for a few years here, and I know it's no different than principals, right? I don't know the current data on it, but how long do you remember the sitting principal? How long is a principal in their building?
I think between superintendent and principal, they were both, I think, under 3 years on an average tenure. Superintendents particularly were getting, for a while there was so much turnover when a lot of the masking mandate stirred up with communities around the nation. The national average was around like close to 2 years, and so many people were retiring. And I think that the highlight is we need to grow our own. I mean, there are a lot of principals out there that would have an interest in superintendencies, but it's a shift. Many people don't think about working for a board versus working for a superintendent, and taking that on is a challenge. And I think as we grow folks in their capacity with executive leadership, more folks are ready to step into those roles, and those in superintendent roles, the more early training that they can get, the more success they will with navigating just the inherent local perspectives that have to be honored when you're a public education executive in our state.
Yeah, and with 89 districts in our state, that's a lot of different needs there. So if you're ready for that challenge, good luck to you, and we support you. Yeah,
right, absolutely.
And so the last priority is just additional support for our Attendance for Success Act. We know that attendance is always a challenge, but it is also the #1 driver of students being successful. Kids who show up, kids who are at school, they're going to be more successful and they're going to be more likely to graduate. And so I know we all have to submit that attendance plan and provide those tiers of support, and we all want to do that. But at the same time, how do we both support principals and districts in doing that? Is it funding? Is it different structures to support families? Is it there's so many questions I think out there with attendance, and obviously the one looming question, or the one looming frustration, I guess I should say, amongst principals is there are no teeth, right? And we all know that, and so it makes it very challenging. We want to be there to support all students in that, but that can be a frustration point for many principals.
Well, and I think my personal opinion is the best policy, and what we need help from the state with in this policy priority, is a balanced approach. And it is very accurate. There's no teeth right now sometimes with attendance laws, and we need the state to step in and recognize, yes, we do not want to punish families for issues of attendance. Attendance is something that's in the hands of families, but when they say that they're enrolling a kid in a public school and they're not ensuring that the kid shows up, we need some supports to tell that parent, I hate to put it this way, but step up. I mean, there's some things that are going to happen if you're not doing that. On a positive end, I will tell you, there's also the approach. I've heard people, and some of these are fringe ideas, but I think it's important to talk about them. I've had it brought up that with some at-risk populations of kids, do we need to take a look at the idea of paying kids for positive attendance? Now, as the homeless coordinator in Aztec, through my role with the McKinney-Vento program, it's intriguing to me that when you have a kiddo that is dealing with many more challenges than your average student, doing something to help that kid, to say, look, it's tough for you to go out and get a part-time job, so what if we do recognize that challenge, and we do say that positive attendance might come with a stipend paid out to at-risk kids for showing positive attendance? I think that's a phenomenal idea, an expensive one, potentially, but no more expensive than the cost of lack of attendance is having on families right now.
Sure. So. And maybe that is an answer, and maybe that's an investment, a small investment, maybe that pays off later on. Who knows that? Because on the other side of the coin, there's a more of a consequence-driven approach in some states where you don't show up to class X percentage and you don't earn credit. And so I know we're always pushing our teachers to ensure that grades reflect learning and not behaviors and things like that. So there's a lot of great conversation to have around that, and so I'm excited to watch how that unfolds as well. Moving on, I think that'll pretty much wrap up our session here today. A couple of the pieces of homework for you here. So number one, if you're interested, sign up for that safety summit there in Albuquerque. Great opportunity to see some things and be more prepared. I can say that I've attended a prepare training, and it is great training. Really, unfortunately, it's not about when, or it's not about if, it's about when something tragic will happen in our building. It might not be to the level of a school shooting, obviously, but we always deal with traumatic events in our buildings, and so I think that the school safety summit is a great way to be prepared for something like that.
I think we can pause to recognize that the schools that Rocky and I both work with have had direct personal experience with those tragedies, and so being prepared is a huge part about addressing that. So.
And then thank your local art teacher as well, because they play such a big role in our buildings. And then follow us on Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Have a great day.
Thank you for leading New Mexico.